They feasted while their enemies starved. They danced on blood-stained floors. And when the crowns slipped from their heads, they didn't fall with grace. They were torn apart. Game of Thrones is often praised as fantasy, but what if I told you it's one of the most brutally honest mirrors of our real history? Strip away the dragons and magic, and what you're left with is not fiction, but fragments of a very real, very bloody past. Let's start in the Tower of London. In 1483, two young princes vanished without a trace. Edward V and his brother Richard, sons of a dead king, nephews of a scheming uncle. Sound familiar? Because George R.R. Martin didn't pull the story of the Stark boys, Bran and Rickon, out of thin air. He borrowed it from this chilling mystery. The princes in the tower were believed to be murdered so their uncle could seize the throne. Much like how Theon Greyjoy fakes the deaths of Bran and Rickon to maintain control of Winterfell. Martin once admitted, "My model for the Starks were the Yorks." And the Yorks were real, but that's just the beginning. Travel further back to the 12th century, England plunged into a civil war known as the Anarchy. A power struggle between Empress Matilda and her cousin Stephen, a woman claiming the throne by blood, denied by tradition. Sound familiar again? Daenerys Targaryen, the exiled princess returning to claim her birthright, echoes Matilda's long and violent fight for the English crown. The people's loyalties swayed with the winds. Nobles changed sides for profit, and for nearly 2 decades, England bled under feuding factions. Chaos was not just a ladder, it was the norm. And then there's the Red Wedding. It's one of the most shocking moments in television history, guests slaughtered under the guise of hospitality. But it happened. Twice. The first was the Black Dinner of 1440. The teenage Earl of Douglas was invited to dine with the King of Scotland. At dessert, a black bull's head, symbol of death, was slammed onto the table. Moments later, the boy and his younger brother were dragged out and beheaded. Execution disguised as feasting. The second was the Glencoe Massacre of 1692. 38 members of Clan MacDonald were murdered by soldiers who had days earlier accepted their hospitality. Men who had shared bread and warmth turned traitor while their hosts slept. Martin didn't invent the Red Wedding. History did. And what about the Wall, stretching across the frozen north, manned by the outcasts of society, defending the realm from threats most people don't believe in? That too is real. Hadrian's Wall, built by the Romans nearly 2,000 years ago to keep the barbarians of the north, ancient Britons and Picts, at bay. The soldiers stationed there were not Rome's finest. Many were criminals, debtors, and misfits. Much like the Night's Watch, they were sworn to serve until death, guarding against dangers that drifted into myth. Now let's talk dragons. There's no real-world parallel for fire-breathing lizards, of course, but their symbolism, that's grounded in history. The Targaryens, silver-haired conquerors riding dragons into war, echo the Normans, who crossed the sea and took England by fire and blood in 1066. Like Aegon the Conqueror, William the Conqueror united divided kingdoms under a new rule, foreign, feared, and absolute. But there is a darker undercurrent here. The Targaryens practiced incest to preserve their bloodline. Uncomfortable? It should be. But the Egyptian pharaohs did the same. So did European royals. The Habsburgs intermarried for centuries, resulting in grotesque deformities like the infamous Habsburg jaw. Martin simply took that idea and gave it wings. Even Cersei and Jaime Lannister's forbidden bond and the secret at births has roots in royal history. King John of England was rumored to have an unnatural relationship with his sister. Royal scandals, hidden heirs, illegitimate children. These aren't fantasy. They're political currency in the history books. Let's turn to Littlefinger. Cunning, manipulative, playing lords and ladies like chess pieces. He is not a new archetype. He is Thomas Cromwell. Or maybe he's Richelieu. Or maybe every shadowy advisor who whispered into the ear of power and pulled strings behind closed doors. And then there's Varys, the spider, a eunuch who trades in secrets, not swords, modeled, some say, on Byzantine court eunuchs. Men who rose to immense power in the Eastern Roman Empire precisely because they could not father dynasties of their own. Loyalty through sterility, influence through whispers. You begin to realize Almost every character has a counterpart. Joffrey Baratheon, try Caligula, a boy king unhinged by privilege and power, whose cruelty became legend. Stannis Baratheon, he's Oliver Cromwell, a religious zealot who believed divine will justify unspeakable acts. Ramsay Bolton, there are too many brutal medieval lords to count, but Vlad the Impaler certainly fits the mold. Torture, mutilation, psychological warfare, all for dominance. And what of the faith of the Seven? The militant sect, the High Sparrow, the public shaming of Cersei. It's medieval Catholicism reimagined. The way religion and power collided during the Inquisition, when heresy meant death, and repentance was a public spectacle. Martin drew directly from the days when bishops held armies and popes launched crusades. Even wildfire has its roots. Greek fire, the ancient Byzantine weapon, burned atop water and terrified enemy fleets. Its formula was lost, just like wildfire's supposed magic, but its terror was real. Wars were won by those who controlled it. As for the Iron Bank of Bravos, that's the Medici Bank, powerful, independent, able to make or break kings with loans and favors. When monarchs couldn't pay their debts, the Medici could collapse nations with a signature, but perhaps the most haunting real-world mirror lies in the War of the Roses. Two noble families, York and Lancaster, one bore a white rose, the other red. Thrones traded, usurped, reclaimed, princes slain, queens betrayed, battles fought not for the people but for legacy. And when the dust settled, the Tudors rose, just as the Targaryens once did. Peace came not through justice, but exhaustion. George R.R. Martin didn't create a fantasy world. He resurrected our past. He just gave it dragons to make the truth easier to swallow. And maybe that's the real genius of Game of Thrones. It lures you in with magic and quietly teaches you how power actually works, how loyalty is fleeting, how honor gets men killed, how the people don't choose kings, the powerful do. And most of all, that history, however twisted, always repeats. Because in the end, the game never really changes. Only the players do.